Hi
everyone,
Kevin
my name is
here.
Kevin. Today I want to show
we
you
are going
how
to
you
learn
can
about
use
formulas
in
and
Microsoft
in
Excel.
Microsoft
And as
Excel.
full disclosure, before we
Maybe
jump
you
into
have
this,
a
I
job
work at
interview
Microsoft
coming
as a
up, or
full-time
a
employee.
test where
All right,
you
well,
have
let's
to
jump into
demonstrate
it.
your knowledge
Here
of
I am in
Excel.
Microsoft Excel. This is the
Don't
latest
worry,
version. I
I've
have
got your
Office
back.
365, but these
We're
same
going to start with
formulas
the
should work on
fundamentals
any
of how
older
you can even
versions of
enter a
Excel as
formula
well, whether
into
you
Excel.
have 2019,
And
2016,
then we'll
2013,
advance to the
2007.
most
You
commonly
name the
used
version,
functions.
it'll probably work.
By
So
the
here
end
I
of this
am
video,
in Microsoft
you'll be
Excel,
a
and I have a
pro
list of
with
formulas that I want to
formulas
show
and
you how
functions.
you can use them in Excel.
To
If there's
follow
one that
along,
interests
I've
you
included
more
a
than
workbook
others,
down
feel
below
free
in
to
the
jump to
description.
that section of the
You
video.
can
I
also
have
jump around this
timestamps,
video using
down
the
below in the
timestamps
comments,
down
and you can
below.
just jump to the section that
All right,
you find interesting.
let's get started.
So
Here I am
how
now
do you
in
do
Microsoft
Excel, or formulas
and
in
I'm
Excel?
currently on the formula
so
fundamentals
we're going to start
worksheet,
with the
just in case
basics
you want
of
to
add,
follow
subtract,
along.
multiply, and divide.
And
So
I
let's
want
say
to
that I
calculate
have
how
two
much
numbers in
revenue
cells. I
I
have
earned
1 and 1,
from
and I
the
want
three
to add
different
these
types of
up. How
cookies
do I
that we
do
sell
that?
here at
Well,
the Kevin
the
Cookie
key to
Company.
doing formulas
So
in
I
Excel
could
is you
use a
always start
formula
with
to
the
calculate
equal
this,
sign.
but
So here I'm going to enter
even
equal,
easier,
and
I
what
wanna
I could
add
do
up
is I could say, well,
these
what
three
is
different
1
cells.
plus
When
1?
I
So I can
highlight
just
these
enter
three
that
different
in, and
cells,
you'll see that
if
shows up
we
in this
look
formula
down
bar
below here
up
on the
above.
status bar, you'll
So
actually
what I'm
see
going to do now
that
is I'm
we
just
have
going
the
to hit
sum
enter,
right here.
and you'll see
It's
that it added
23,
those two values
and that's
up.
how
So
much
it says
revenue we
equals
made
1
from these
plus
cookies.
1.
So
Now, what I
you
could
don't even
also
have
do
to
is
enter
instead
in a
of typing
formula
the
to get
numbers
some
into that
basic
formula
metrics
bar, I
back.
could use numbers that are
And
on
in
my
fact, if I
spreadsheet.
click on the
So what I'm
sum
going to do is
here,
I'm going to go ahead and
I
delete
can go
that.
into the
And once again,
total
we're going to
cell
start with the
and press
equal
Control V
sign,
to
and
paste,
instead I'm going to
and
say,
here
hey,
I've
this
added
value
up
here, that's
all of
in
these different
cell
cells,
B1.
just like that,
Let's
just by
take
using the
that,
status
and I
bar.
want to add it
Now,
to
down
the
below,
value
when I
that's
have
here
these
in
three
cell
values highlighted, I can also go to
So
the
I did
status
plus
bar
sign
and
and then
right-click.
C1, and so here
And
you
here,
see
if I
it says
scroll down this
B1
menu,
plus C1.
you'll see
So
that
it's
I also
taking
get
those
the
two
average,
cells,
the
and now I'm going to
count.
hit
Here I
enter,
can get
and
the
so it
min, the
added
max,
those
and
two
here I
up.
have the sum.
And now
So
I'm
here,
going
if
to
I
show a few
check this on,
examples.
here I can
Subtract,
also
multiply,
see the
divide,
max
that
now
you do them all
down
the
below
same
on
way
the
as
status bar.
addition. So let's say I
So
want to
this
do
is
2
one way
minus
to
1.
get some quick
What I'll
answers
do
without
is I'll do
even needing
equals.
to
We could
enter in
do
a
2 minus
formula.
1 and hit enter, and
Now,
that'll
of
tell us
course,
it's
this
1.
video is all
But
about
once again, I want
formulas
to use
and
the cells.
functions,
So
and
we're
we
going to do
should
cell
probably enter in
B2,
our first
and we're going
formula.
to subtract cell
So
C2.
here I'll come up and
And
let me
then I'm
delete
going
the
to hit enter,
23 that
and
we got
what do you
from the
know?
status bar.
2 minus
And
1
here,
is
once
1.
again, I want to add up 10 plus
Big
8
news
plus
flash
5.
there.
So
And
the
now
first thing I need
we're
to
going to do
do
a
to
few
enter
other
a formula
examples.
is
We're
to
going to
enter
do 2
the
times
equal
2,
sign.
and then we'll do
This
4
tells
divided
Excel
by 2.
that I'm about
So
to
let's
enter in
do
a formula.
2 times
And
2. So
here
once
I can
again,
take
we're going to
10,
enter the equal
and I
sign,
can add
and we're going
8,
to take cell
and I can add
B3.
5. Here
And then
you can see
multiply,
my
you
very
can enter an
basic
X
formula.
here, like the
Now, if we
multiplication
look
sign.
up
Instead,
above
what we're
here
going to
in
do
the
is we
formula
enter the
bar, you'll
asterisk
see the
sign.
formula here as well.
And then we're going to multiply that
To
by
calculate
cell
this
C3.
formula now,
You don't have
all I
to
need to
enter.
do
You could
is to
also
press
enter
the
the
enter
cell
key.
values, or you can just click with the mouse.
Congratulations.
Clicking with the mouse is easier. So
You
why
just
don't we do
entered
that?
your first
So I'm going
formula
to click
in
that,
Excel.
and 2 times
To
2
go
is
back
4.
and edit this formula,
And
here I can
same with
click into
division,
this
I'm
cell,
going to
and
do
here we see the
4,
formula
and then we're
up
going to see how many
above, so
times
I can
2
modify the
goes into
values
4.
up here.
The division
Or
sign on the computer
alternatively,
is
I can
the
also
forward
double
slash.
click into
So I'm
this
going to
cell,
enter
and
the
this will
forward
once
slash,
again
and then
show
we're
me the
going to
formula,
click
and
on
then I
cell
can make
C4.
modifications
So we're
here.
going to do B4 divided
Now,
by
one problem with
C4.
just entering
And what
in
is
the
4
formula
divided by
like
2,
this?
everyone?
Let's say that
It is
now we
2.
made
2
revenue
goes into
of
4 2
11
times.
on our chocolate chip
So
cookie.
add,
Here,
subtract,
I'll press
multiply,
enter.
divide, those are
You'll
all
see
pretty
that this did
straightforward.
not update.
Now let's
And
say
the
a
reason
little
why
more
is we
difficult. Let's say
hard-coded
that I
in these
wanted to
values.
add all
So
these
as
values
these values
up.
over
Now
here
once again, you
change,
could enter
my
a formula
formula
where you say,
doesn't
okay, well,
change.
1 plus 1
So instead
plus
of
2,
hard-coding
it's
these
going to take a long
numbers or
time. We have a
values
lot of
in,
different cells, so we
instead
don't
I
want
want
to do
to
that.
reference
I
the
could also
different
say,
cells.
you know, this
So here, for example,
plus
instead of
this
typing
plus
in
this
10,
plus
I
this,
want to
but
use
that also
cell
is going to take a long
B2.
time, and we don't want to do
So here,
that.
let me
So
delete
that's where the
10,
sum
and I can type
formula
in
comes in.
B,
It makes
and
things
then
a
I'll
little bit
enter
easier
2.
for us. And what you could
And
do
here
is
you see
do
that the
equals
cell has
again.
now highlighted.
And then we type in sum.
And here also for the
and then I'm
8,
going to
instead of
do
hard-coding
open
that, here I'm going to
parentheses.
type in C2.
And then here it's giving you a little hint of what you need to
and
do.
also
so
here,
number 1,
I want
number
to type
2.
in D2.
So here I could go
for the
in and
sugar
I could
cookie
say,
revenue.
this one, and then it says insert
And
a comma.
now I can
so
press
comma,
enter. And here you see
comma.
I get
so
the
I could
same
do
result.
that, but that's
the
still
nice
not
thing
that
now
good.
is, let's say
so
the revenue for the
we're
chocolate
gonna go
chip cookie
to
changes. Let's
equals
say it's now
sum,
11.
and then open
You'll notice that the
parentheses,
total
and then I can just
automatically
highlight
updates.
all these numbers. So
When
I'm just
I
clicking
click
with my
back
mouse
into the
and
total
dragging
cell,
it,
here you'll
and
see
then I'm going
that
to close the
Excel
parentheses at the
uses
end, and I hit
different
enter,
colors.
and that adds up
So
all
here
the
you'll
values.
see
It's
blue on
24.
B2,
So
and this is
super
also
easy to
highlighted
do.
by
What I can
blue.
also
Here
do is I
C2
can
is
click
red,
on
and
this
here you see
formula
red,
sign, and I
and
can
here's
say
purple, and
sum.
here you see purple. So
And
the colors
if
here
you
in
want
the
help writing
formula
your formula, so
correspond
here
to
too
the
you can see
cells
kind
that
of how
they're
it's done. But
referring
here I
to.
could drag
Now,
all the
of
numbers
course,
in that I want
typing
to
in a
sum,
cell reference
and then I can click
works,
OK. So
but it
if you'd
also
rather not
requires
kind of
quite a
deal with
bit of
opening
effort.
and shutting your
And
parentheses,
instead,
that's
we
another
can
way
use
you
our
could do it.
keyboard
But
or
here you
our
see that the
mouse
value
to
is
reference
24,
specific cells.
and we're good
Here,
there.
once again, in the total cell,
Some of the other things I
will
can
enter the
do,
equal sign.
min,
And
that gives
instead
me
of
the
typing
minimum
in
value
B2,
above.
I can
So
simply
here
use
are
the
all these
arrows on my
values.
keyboard
Just by
to
glancing at it,
select
you can
that
see that the
cell.
minimum value I have
Here,
here
I'll
is
type
1.
in the plus sign,
But what
and
I could do
arrow
is I could just
over,
type in
and
min,
once again I can arrow over,
and then we're
and then hit
gonna
enter. So that's yet
open my
another way
parentheses.
I can
I'm gonna
refer
highlight
to
all my
specific
numbers that I want
cells.
to min for,
But
and then
even
I'm
with
going
the
to close my
arrow
parentheses.
keys, let's say I have
So
a
you
very
tend to do that a lot
large
when you
sheet,
enter a
and it can take a
formula. You have
while to
parentheses
get to the
open, and
cell
then
that you
parentheses
care
closed.
about.
I'm going to
Here,
enter
once
that.
again,
The
I will
minimum
click on
value there is
delete.
1. We could see
Here,
what
let
the
me
max
enter
is.
the equal sign.
So here
And
I'm going to
instead of using my
highlight all these
keyboard, I
same
can also
numbers
use my
and
mouse.
close the
Here I can
parentheses.
click on
And the max
B2.
value that I have here is
And
4.
I can press the plus
if I now were to
sign, and here let
change
me
this to
select
10, you'll see
C2,
that this
plus,
automatically
and then
updates to
D2.
10.
And here too I can press enter,
Similarly, if I were
and
to
once
change that to
again
0,
we
that
had
would
revenue of
automatically say the
23.
minimum value is
Now
now
that we
0.
know what the revenue is,
Okay,
let's
now
say I want to know
we
what
want to
the
look at
cost
counts.
is.
And so what
now,
count
once again,
does
I can
is
type in
you can basically
equal sign,
count
and I
all
can
the cells
select
that
this
have a
cell.
number in them.
I could add
So
this,
what
and
I'll
I could
do is
add
I'll say
this,
let's
just
count.
like we did up above. But
And
that
I want to
takes a
know
bit of
in
effort.
this, so in this
Instead,
set,
I
let's
can
say
click
these
into
set,
this
this set of
cell where
numbers.
we already
how
have a
many
formula.
cells are there that have a
And
number?
I can click on this
So
fill
I
handle
highlighted
in
all
the
those.
bottom
I'm going to
right-hand
close the
corner. There you
parentheses
see
again,
that
and
my
I'm going to hit
cursor
enter. And
changes
so it
to a
says there's
plus
12
icon.
numbers. Well, that
And I
makes
can
sense.
simply
'cause
click
1,
on that
2,
and then
3,
drag
4,
it down.
and then another
And
4,
here
and
you'll
then
see
another
now
4
that
gives
the
me 12.
formula has
What's
updated
interesting
where
is it
adds
only
up
looks
all
for
of my
cells that
different
have a number
costs.
in it. So
the
here I could
formula
go and I could
adjusted
highlight all
relatively.
these, close the
I moved
parentheses.
the formula
It's
down
still
by
only
one
telling me
row,
12
so it also
because
updated
all these
all
other
the
cells that I copied
references
have no
by
value
one
in it.
row.
Now there's
Over
also
here, I
called
can also
something called
use
count A,
subtraction.
and that
So
counts
let's
all
say I
the
want to
cells that
calculate
even
the
just have a
profit.
value in them.
To calculate the profit, that's
we'll
the
go
revenue
equals
minus
again,
the
count
cost.
A,
Once again, I'll enter the equal
and then I'm
sign.
going to highlight.
And here we
let's
had
highlight
revenue
all
of
these
10
cells,
for chocolate
and I'll
chip,
close
and let
it.
me subtract
There too,
4.
there are 12.
And once again, I could press
but let's say I
enter,
type
and
in my
here
name
the
here.
profit is 6.
So it's counting any
Now,
cell that
just
has
like we
a
did
value.
before,
So
if
that
I want
counts
the profit
Kevin,
for all of
the
these other
count
columns,
formula
once again, I can
is
click
only
on the
counting
fill
cells with
handle, and
numbers.
I can drag this
So that's
over.
why I didn't pick up
And
the
once
Kevin,
again,
and
it
then here I could type
automatically
in another
adjusts
value. Let's
the
say I type in the
formula
city I live in,
relatively.
Seattle.
So I moved it
So
over
you see the
1, so the
count A is
formula
picking up
references
that
moved
cell.
over 1.
All right, so
And here
moving
you can
on
see how
down
that
here, we
works
want
for
to know
every
the
single
average
column.
now. So we're going
That's
to
a
change it
quick
up a little
way
bit. I'm
to
going to type in,
reproduce
let's
a
type
formula
in
in many
some
different columns or many
salaries.
different rows.
Let's say that these are
Now,
different
this is some
income
pretty nice
levels.
profit, but unfortunately,
And then
you
I'm just
have to
going to
give
throw
up some
on
of
the
that
dollar
profit
sign
towards
so they actually
taxes.
look like
And to calculate the tax,
dollar
we're going to
amounts.
use multiplication.
And so let's say I want to know the average
Down here in
income.
cell
I just type in
B5,
average.
I want the profit
super
of 6,
easy. The name
and
of
I'm
the
going
formula
to
matches what you're
multiply
trying
it
to
by
do.
the tax
And
rate
then I'll
of
just
10%.
highlight those
So once again,
incomes,
let's enter
and
the
then
equal
so the
sign.
average is
And
42,500.
here I'll reference
You'll
this
notice that
cell
the
with the
100,000
profit.
is pulling
And
the
once again, I want to
average up.
multiply it by 10%.
And then you could also do
Now,
the
you might
median.
think
The
the
median is
multiplication
the
sign is
middlemost
an
value.
X,
So you
but
take all
in
your values,
Excel,
you
that's
line
just
them
a
up. What is the
character.
value in the middle?
To enter the
So here I'm
multiplication
going to
sign, we
select
enter
these
the
values,
asterisk.
and
That's how you
we're going to see
multiply
what the
something.
median is. It looks
And
like the
here
median
I'll
is at
select
27.5.
10%. And then I can
if I
press
threw
enter,
in,
and
let's
it
say
looks like the
another
tax is
value,
0.6 or 60
let's
cents.
extend that one more.
Now
and then
here,
I'm gonna
once
pick
again,
the
I want to
middlemost
calculate
value.
the tax for
So
all
there's
of my different
30,000.
cookie types.
One thing you'll notice is
just like we
the
did before,
average
we could use the
is
fill
just an average
handle.
across all the numbers. The
Here,
median
once
is the
again,
middlemost
I'll select
value,
that.
so
Let
the
me drag it
median
over
is
one
lower than
column.
the average.
But here you
what I
see
can
that
also
the
do
tax is
concatenate.
0.
So my
Now,
name is
from a
Kevin
business standpoint, that's
Stratford,
good
and let's
news,
say I
but
wanted
I
to
don't think it's calculated correctly.
concatenate them.
Here, if I
Concatenate
click on
basically
the
means taking
cell,
one and
I can
connecting
go
it
to the
another.
formula bar, and when I
So
click on this, I can see
concat,
all of the different
and
references.
I'll take this value, and then we're
And
going to enter
here
a
it
comma.
was
It's telling me
making
to put a
relative
comma there between
references.
the
So once
values,
again, as I
and then I'll
pulled the
close
formula over,
parentheses,
here
and,
it
there it's
adjusted
filled
it to
in.
look at this
Although I
cell.
might want,
But if we
let's
look up
say-
here at
let's
the
say I
tax
wanna add
rate,
a
it
space in
also
there, so I'm
moved
gonna add a
this
space in
reference
that
over
cell.
1.
You can
But I want the
concatenate
reference
as
to
many
point
values
at
as you
this
want.
specific
So
cell,
here I could
or
also bring in that value,
G2.
and
So
that brought
I
in the
basically
space.
want to
So that's
lock this
concatenate.
reference.
If is pretty
So let me
nice.
go
This
back
is
to the
bringing logic
original
into
formula
Excel.
where we calculated the
So what I'm
tax.
going to
And in
do
here, once
is
again,
let's
I wanna
say
lock
this is
this reference
smile.
in.
So what I could say
And
is
we're going
if,
to use a shortcut key to
and
do this.
what I want to do
we can
is
press the
if,
F4
let's say
key or the
this
function
cell
4 key on our
equals
keyboard.
smile,
And you'll notice that it adds a dollar sign before the
then
G
what I
and
want
a
to
dollar
do is I
sign
want to
before
say
the 2.
yay. array.
The
And
dollar
if it
sign tells
doesn't,
Excel
so the
that
value
we
of
want
true
to
and the value
lock
of false.
both the
So if
column
it's not
and
true
the
and it
row.
doesn't contain that, then I'm
Here
going to say
I'll press
boo.
enter.
And so here
And
it's
now if
smile,
I
so it
pull
says
this
yay.
over,
Let's say it's frown.
You'll
and
notice
it says
the
boo.
formula works
So there you can
as
see
we
how you can
expect it
include
to.
an
And
if
when I
statement
click
to
in,
basically
here
say,
you can see
if
that
this
it
cell
adjusts
contains something, do
this
this or
first
that.
cell relatively,
I can also
and
count
then it locks
if.
in the tax rate.
So this is
here it
kind of
did that for
interesting.
all the
What I
different
could
tax
do
calculations.
is, so let's say
This is what's
count
referred to
if,
as an absolute reference.
and I could say,
as a quick note,
of this
here when I'm
range, so I'll
in this
say
cell
I
and we
want
see
to
the formula
count,
up above
let's
with the
say
dollar
here,
signs, If
I want
I
to count
press
the number
F4
of
again,
cells
now
that
you just
have
see a
a 10
dollar
in
sign
it.
on the row. If I press
Okay,
F4
so basically
again,
you say, hey, this
just
is
see
my
the dollar
range,
sign
and
on
then
the
what's
column.
my criteria?
So
The
you could
criteria
just
is
lock the
what I'm looking
column,
for,
or
so
you
I'm looking
could
for a
just lock
10.
the row.
And
And
here
here
it
if I
tells me
press
within this
F4 again,
range,
it
only
removes it
one
from
cell
everything. And once
has a
again,
10
it's
in it. So
purely
it tells me
just
1.
making a relative
A
reference.
few
But once
others,
again, I
and these
wanna
are getting
lock
more
it,
advanced
so
as we
I'll
go
press
on.
the F4 key.
VLOOKUP.
With this
So I'm going to show a
formula,
quick
I'm
example
currently
here. I'm going to type
referencing
in
the
a few
tax rate that's
names,
on the exact same sheet.
and we're going to put down
But
our
you
favorite
can
color.
also
So I like
reference a
red, which
cell
is why I'm
on a
wearing this
different
red
sheet.
shirt. And
So here, once again, let's go
Alex
back to
likes
this
blue
first
and
cell.
Steven
Here,
likes
I'll
yellow.
delete these different values.
So with VLOOKUP,
And
what I could
instead
say
of
is I want
referencing
to
the
look
tax rate
across
here,
these
let me
values, and I
delete
want to
this.
return back this other column.
And
So
right
let's
now,
show
I
a
need to
quick
enter in the
example.
tax rate.
I also have a
And it
video
turns out
on
there's
VLOOKUP
another
and
sheet
HLOOKUP
called
that goes
tax
more in
rate. I
depth
can
if you
click
want
on
a
that
deeper
sheet.
example.
And here we
So I
see
could
that
say
tax
I
rate
want
of
to look up
10%.
Kevin.
I could click on
So
it here.
you read
And
the
once
lookup
again, I can press
value, and then
F4
table array.
to
That's
make
just
this
the
an
table that
absolute
I'm looking
reference.
in. So I'm going to do
Here,
a comma.
I'll press enter.
This is the table
and once
that I'm
again, this
looking
works.
at.
And
So I'm
here
going to
you see
highlight
that
that
it uses
table,
the worksheet
and I want to get the
name,
color
so it's
back. It
pointing
says
to this
column
tax rate
index
sheet.
number. Well,
And
that's
then the
the
cell
column that I
on
want to
that
get back.
sheet.
So I'm going to say, well, the second
You can
column.
even refer to a completely
and then the last
different
thing is, do I want an
workbook if you
exact,
want.
approximate match?
And you'll see the notation
What that
appear
means is,
right up here
if
in
my
the
name was
formula
Kevin
bar.
something, an approximate
Now,
match
once
would
again,
match,
I can take the
but
fill
I want to do an
handle
exact
and
match,
let's
so I'll just
calculate the
click on
tax
that, and then we'll
across
close
all of these different
parentheses. And so
columns.
here it returns
Now, this seems to
Kevin's
work
favorite
well where
color
I'm
is
referencing
red.
a
So it
different
looks for the
sheet,
value
but
here,
when
and
you
then it
look at the
returns
formula
value
itself,
here.
it's
That's
a
what I can
little
do
bit
with
messy. You have
VLOOKUP.
the sheet name, and then you have the cell reference. I'll go back
Okay,
to the
with sum
tax
if,
rate
what I want
sheet,
to do
and
is,
I can
let's
give
say
this cell
that
a name,
we have these
so I don't have
numbers
to refer
associated
to
with
it as
different people, and I
A2, but
only want
instead
to add
I
up
could
the
use the
number
name
when it's
reference.
associated with Kevin.
Right up here
What I
where
could
you
do is
see
we'll do
A2.
sum if,
Here, I can simply
and I want to
type
look
in
at
tax
this
rate,
range,
and then press enter.
and the criteria I want to look for is that it's Kevin,
to this cell.
and then this
Let's
is
go
my
back
sum
to
range
formula
that I'm looking at.
fundamentals.
And so what
here,
this
instead
does
of
is it
referring
says,
to the
hey,
sheet
you
and
know,
the
we have
cell,
two
I'm going
Kevins,
to
and the
delete
value
that.
associated
And
with them
instead,
is
I'm
10
going
and
to
then
type
5,
in
and it
tax
sums
rate.
them.
And here you see a hint that
So
this
let's
is a
take a
known
look at that
name.
again. So
Now I
here
can press
is, so if I
enter,
go through
and
the formula
that too
again,
works. And it's a lot cleaner now.
sum
Now I
if,
simply
I know
refer
the
to
range,
tax
that's
rate.
my range.
It's really easy to
The
understand what that
criteria
is.
is that it equals Kevin.
Now, let's say
and
that
then I
I'm
want to
entering
add
in a
up these
formula,
values every
and
time
I
there's a
forget
Kevin.
that I had a name
And so there are
called
two
tax
here,
rate.
10 and a 5, and
I
so I'll
can
hit
press
enter,
the
and so it's 15.
F3
So
or
that's in sum
function
if.
3 key
And then the
to
last
see
one,
all
super
the
simple to
different
finish
names.
off with.
When I
If I want to know the
press
current time, I
F3,
just do
here I
equals
get
now,
all
and
the
then
different
open and close
defined names. And
parentheses.
here I see
And
tax
that tells me
rate.
the exact
I
time.
can simply
Today's July
double click
12,
on that, and that
2019,
inserts
1:18
tax
in
rate
the
into my
afternoon,
formula.
Pacific Standard
And then I
Time.
can press enter.
That's when I created this video,
once
and that's
again,
when we're
that's
finishing the
another
video.
way to get back to your
But that's just a
different
very
named
quick
cells.
tutorial of
We've
how
looked
you
at
can enter
addition,
formulas and how
subtraction,
you
and
can use
multiplication,
formulas
and you
in
can
Excel.
also do division as well.
I hope you enjoyed
Here,
this
I'll
video.
go down
If you
to
did,
the
please give it a
profit
thumbs up.
split cell.
If you want to see future
And
videos
here
like
at the
this,
Kevin
hit that
Cookie
subscribe
Company,
button. That
we
way you'll
made
get a
$14
notification
of total
anytime new
profit.
content
For
like
now,
this
I'm
comes
going
out.
to
And if you
ignore
want to see
taxes.
more videos,
And
more
let's say that we
tutorials,
have
leave a
two
comment
owners
down
of this
below.
company. It's
Let me know
me
what
and
you're looking
Patty.
for, and I'll add it to my
So
list
here,
of
once
videos
again,
to make.
I'll type in
All
the
right,
equal
well, I'll see you
sign.
next time. Thanks a
Then I'll
lot, and
select
bye.
the total profit that we earned, and I want to divide it by 2 to see what my share is. To do division, we're going to enter the /, and then here I'll simply type in 2 and press enter. And here we can see that my share of the profit is 7, and Patty's share of the profit is also 7. Next, let's move on to the order of operations worksheet. And here, once again, I see the revenue, the cost, the profit, and the tax for chocolate chip cookies. Now, let's say I want to calculate all of this in just one cell to see what the tax is. I'll enter the equal sign, and first off, I need to take the revenue. I want to subtract the cost, and that should give me the profit. And next, I'm going to multiply this by the tax rate of 10%. And then I'll hit enter. But whoa, what's going on here? My tax is 9.6, but my profit was only 6. That's ridiculous. I mean, I know tax rates are going up, but it shouldn't be more than my overall profit. The problem here is the order of operations. And when I click into the cell, let's double click in, we could take a look at how Excel calculates this. Excel looks for multiplication and division first, and then it evaluates that part of the formula. So here, for example, it's taking 4 and then it multiplies it by 10%, or 0.1, and that gives us 0.4 as the result. In fact, if you want to calculate a portion of your formula, here I have this portion highlighted, I could press the F9 key, and here I can can see that it evaluates to 0.4. I'll press Ctrl Z to undo that. So it's taking 10 and then it's subtracting 0.4. And once again, that gives me 9.6. Now, I wanted to first calculate 10 minus 4 and then take the result of that and multiply it by 10%. To do that, I can use parentheses, and that way I can define what I want the order to be. Here, I'll put a parentheses around b2 minus b3, That way, Excel will evaluate this, it'll take the result, and then it'll multiply it by 10%. Now when I press enter, I get 0.6, and that's exactly the same as what we got on the previous sheet. So one thing to be aware of when you enter formulas, there is an order of operations. Now, up to this point, we've purely been looking at formulas. And next we're going to look at what's called a function. But how is a function different from a formula? Well, with a function, you can pass in a parameter or an argument, and then you get a result back. Now, I know that probably doesn't mean that much, so why don't we make this real and look at some examples. Here on the basic functions worksheet, I want to answer the question, how many cookies did we sell? Here I see all of the different cookies we sold, so I want to add up this list. Now, we could just use a simple formula to do this. Once again, I could enter the equal sign, and I could take this, and I could add it to this, and I could add it to that, and I could go through this whole list, but that takes a lot of time. Instead, we want to use a function, and that'll make this entire job a lot easier. So how do we insert a function? Well, one thing we could do is up here, we could click on Formulas or the Formulas tab, and over on the left-hand side, there's the option to insert a function. As I hover over, you'll also see that the shortcut key is Shift F3, so you could use that as well. Let's click on this. This opens up the Insert Function dialog, and right up on top it says type a brief description of what you want to do and then click on Go. Now once again, I want to add up all these values, or another way of saying that, I want to sum up all these values. So let's type in sum. Then I'll click on Go, and here it looks like there is a function called sum. There are also some other options, and we'll get into these later, but for now we just want to sum these up. Let's click on OK. Here now it asks me what numbers I want to sum up. I'll move this over just a little bit so we can see the numbers we want to add up. And here it says number 1 and number 2. Now I'll delete this value, and here I could click on this cell, number 2, I could click here. But you'll notice that this isn't very much faster than just adding up all of the different cells using formulas. So here, let me delete those again. Instead, here I can highlight this entire column. So here I can highlight all of these different values. And you'll notice here it says B2 colon B8. So I'm passing in all of these different values, basically this range. And here you can see the range of values that I pass in. These are referred to as the arguments or the parameters that I'm passing into the function. And right here at the bottom, you can see what they add up to. So when I sum all of these different numbers, that gives me 421. And this is a basic function. Next, I can click on OK, and here you see that I just summed up all of these different cells. One thing to call out, when I double click into the cell, you can see the notation of a function. So once again, you start with the equal sign. That lets Excel know that you're entering either a formula or a function. Then you type in the function name, and then you open the parentheses. Here you pass in the arguments or the parameters, and then you close the parentheses at the end. So instead of using the insert function helper, you could simply type this in. Now, interestingly, there's also a function that you could enter in that shows you a function. So here I could type in equals, and let's type in formula text. And then here I'll open the parentheses, and I have to reference a cell. So let me reference this cell and then close the parentheses. So I'm following the same format that we saw with sum. And when I press enter, here now we can see the function that's being used in this cell. So just to help you see what's going on to get this 421. Now, Excel has many different functions that you can use. And here, if we click on formulas up on top, here you can see some of the different categories. You have financial functions, you have logical functions, text functions, and there are many different options here. But once again, if you want to search for a function, once again, you can click on Insert Function, and then you can use the search command. Now, there's one category here called Auto Sum, and when I click on the drop-down, this contains some of the most commonly used functions. Here, for example, we see sum again, but you have average, count numbers, max, and min, and then once again, you can get to all of your functions. So let's say, for example, here at the bottom of the list, let's say I want to sum it up here. I could click on Formulas, and then simply click on Auto Sum, and it'll default to sum. And here I could simply press Enter, and I get the sum. Now, Auto Sum is used so frequently that it's also on the Home tab. Here I could click on Home, and I could go over to Editing, and here once again we see Auto Sum. Now when I hover over this, you'll see once again that it defaults to sum, but here too you'll see the shortcut key. I could press Alt together with the equals key. So here I will click into this cell and I can press Alt and equals, and once again that will also give me the sum. So that's an even quicker way to get the sum. Now once again, this is one of the most commonly used functions in Excel. Over on the right hand side, I want to continue answering these different business questions, and I want to know the most number of cookies sold. Here once again I could click on formulas, and let me go back to this AutoSum group because it has some of the most common functions. And here's the function for max. I could click on that. And here it enters max, but it's looking at this cell. And instead, I want the max number from this. So here, once again, I'll highlight this list. So this is the argument or the parameter that I'm feeding in. And I could press enter. And here I could see that chocolate chip had the most number of cookies sold at 97. And here we could validate that by looking at this list. I'll delete the 421. Right over here, I also want to know the least number of cookies sold. And if we just look at this list, we see that it's Fortune with 36. I'll click into this cell. And once again, I could go to formulas, AutoSum, and here I could select min. But instead, let's just type in the function. Once again, I'll type in the equal sign, and let me type in the function name, min. Open the parentheses, and then we have to pass in the argument, and that's this list of values. And then I can close the parentheses, hit enter, and here we see that Fortune Cookie only had 36 cookies sold. Let's say instead of knowing the max or the min, I want to know, well, what was the second most sold, or what was the second least sold? And for that, we could use the function large or small. Here I'll type in equals, and I could type in large and then open parentheses. And here it asks for an array and a k. And if you're not quite sure what these mean, to make it a little easier, we could click on this fx or insert function, and this once again opens up the function arguments. And here we see some hints on what those values need to be. So first off, the array is the range of data. So here I'll click into this cell and let me select my data, or what's referred to as the array. And then k, this refers to the number that we want back. So here I want the second largest, so let me type in a 2. And here we can see that it's 77 for oatmeal raisin. I could click on OK, and here I get the result back. So as you enter different functions in, if you need help with them, remember you can click on this fx right up above, and that'll open up the function helper, and this will help you to compose your function. Down below, I want the second least sold, so let me type in the equal sign, and for this, I'll type in small. And once again, it wants the array, that's this list, and I want the second smallest, so once again, I'll type in a 2, hit enter, and here I can see that peanut butter is the second least sold cookie. With the large and the small functions, we entered two separate parameters. So here once again, when I open the function helper, here you see that it's asking for an array and it's also asking for the number that we want. So with various functions, you may have many different arguments that you can pass in. And this is just one example where you can pass in two different arguments or two different parameters. Next, let's say I want to know how many cookies had any sales at all, and there's a function for that called count. Here I could type in count, and we see there are also some other options, and in a moment we'll get to what some of those are. But here I'll type in count, once again open parentheses, here I can highlight this list, then close parentheses, and then hit enter. So I can see that 7 different cookies had at least some sales. Now let's take a look at the count of the cookie names. So here, once again, I'll type in count and let me highlight all of the cookie names. So how many different cookie types do we have? And here I could press enter, but here it shows me 0. So why is that? Well, when we use the count function, this is counting numerical cells. And these cells over here have text-based values, so it's returning a 0. And once again, if I click into this, let's take a look at some of these other count functions. Once again, I'll type in equals count, and here I see that there's an option called count A. And when we read this, this will return back all of the cells in a range that aren't empty. So let me select that, and here once again I could highlight this list, close the parentheses, hit enter, and here now it tells me that there are 7 different cookie types. And just like you could count cells that have a value in it, you could also count all of the blanks. So here I could type in count blank, and let's say I select all the cookie names plus one additional blank row. Then I'll close the parentheses, and here it tells me that there's 1 blank value. So yet another count function that you can use. If we move down just a little bit more, there are a few more questions that I want to answer, and this will show us even more functions. I want to know, across all of my cookies, what was the average sold? To enter the average, you could probably guess it, but the function name is average. And once again, if we go up to formulas and AutoSum, here we'll see average here, so you could also get to it here. I could select average. Once again, I could highlight the list, and I could hit enter. So I don't always have to close the parentheses. I could just press enter, and that too will calculate. So that saves you a little bit of time. And here I can see that on average, we sold 60.14 cookies. Along with your average, you can also calculate the median, or basically which number is in the middle of this list. If we just look at it, we see that it's 52. Here I could type in median, open the parentheses, let me highlight this list and press enter, and there we see that it's 52. And we could also use something called the mode, and this tells us which number occurs most frequently in this list. Now when we look at this list, 97 shows up once, 77 shows up once, but here we have 52 that shows up twice. Here I could enter equals mode. Once again, I'll select this list, hit enter, and here we see that 52 shows up the most often in this list. Moving on now to the conditional functions worksheet, we're now getting a little bit more advanced. And here we have a function called SUMIF. So here we can sum up values if it meets a certain criteria. So let's say, for instance, that I want to know how many cookies we sold in the United States. So if it's the United States, I want to sum up all of these values. And for that, we're going to use the SUMIF function. Now, once again, probably the easiest way to enter a function is to click on the insert function icon, and this opens up the dialog that will help us write this function. Here I could type in SUMIF, click on go, and here I see it down below. I'll click on this one. Here it asks me for the range. And so what is the range? Well, here I could just look down below and it tells me exactly what that is. It's the range of cells that I want to evaluate. Now, remember, I want to evaluate whether it's in the United States. So here I could simply highlight this column right here. And for my criteria, I want it to be the United States. So I'll click in this cell. Now I could also type in United States here, but in this case, I'll simply click on this cell. Lastly, it asks me for the sum range. So if it finds United States in this column, then I want to add up these different cookies sold. So for the sum range, I'll select this column. And here I could already see that it's 362. I'll click on OK. And just to confirm, I could highlight all of these different cells, and down below I can see that the sum is 362. So this is how you can use a conditional function. Down below, you'll see some additional functions like average if, and here's count if. And these work the exact same way as SUMIF. If some condition is met, then you'll average out all the values. Or if some condition is met, we could count all of those items. So once again, they work exactly like SUMIF, except in this case, you average or you count. I want to show one neat thing that you can do. Here within the function for SUMIF, let me open up the function helper again. And for the criteria, here I'm going to type in United States. And once again, I will click on OK. And we see that the function works the exact same way. But let's say that I want to sum up all the values for countries that end in an S. Now, it's an arbitrary situation, but I want to show you how you could search based on a wildcard. So here, I'll remove most of the United States, but I'll leave the S. And here I can insert an asterisk, or the wildcard symbol. So it'll look for any characters before the last character, which needs to be an S. Here, if I press enter, I get a sum of 802. So this is the sum of all of the cookies sold in the United States, which ends in an S, and also the Philippines, which also ends in an S. And here, if I highlight all of these cells, I can see that the sum here is 802, and that matches up with 802 right up here. So this is yet another way that you can sum different values based on a condition. Next, we have another formula called SUMIF-S. So it looks like the same thing as SUMIF, but why do we have an S on the end? Well, you could think of this as the plural version. So you can look for multiple criteria. So let's actually test this out to see how it works. Here I'll click on Insert Function, and here let's type in SUMIF and S. I'll click on Go and then select this function. And here first it asks me for the sum range. So what do I want to add up? Here I'll select the cookies sold column. And here it says the criteria range 1. So I want to evaluate the country column first. So let's say I want to know how many cookies were sold in the United States. I'll select this column, and then my criteria is United States. But now I can add additional criteria. So maybe here I want to check, hey, was it a chocolate chip cookie? So here I could select this range, and for the criteria, I'll select chocolate chip. And then I can click on OK, and here I see the sum of chocolate chip cookies sold in the United States is 28. Building on this, let's say I want to know how many cookies were sold in the United States that were either chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin, and I can do that as well with sum if and s. Once again, I'll open up the function arguments. And right here where I have my criteria for the cookie type, here I chose chocolate chip cookie. I'll remove that, and here let me highlight chocolate chip and oatmeal raisin, so I could select 2 different values as my criteria. And then I'll click on OK. And here I get 2 values back. One is 28, which is the sum of chocolate chip cookies, and then I get 32, which is the sum of oatmeal raisin cookies sold in the United States. Now I get them back separately, so each criteria comes back as a separate entry. Now if I just want to get this back as 1, right up here within the formula, I can click here, type in sum, insert a parentheses around the sum if function, then hit enter, and here it'll add up those 2 values. And so the sum of both chocolate chip and oatmeal raisin in the United States, here if I highlight these cells, we see it's 60, and here I get 60 back. Down below, we also see average if and s, count if and s, and then also min and max. So once again, for all of these different functions, you can have multiple criteria. Now, you might be wondering, well, with sum if and s, you could just have 1 criteria, at which point it's exactly the same as sum if. So you could just always use sum if and s and then ignore sum and if, because this not only does 1 criteria, but it also allows you to add in multiple criteria. Moving on to the next worksheet, we're going to look at some functions that allow you to manipulate text, and these can be a big time saver. Here's the first one. We have the Kevin Cookie Company name, but I forgot to capitalize the first letter of each word. Now, of course, I could go through and I could change that, or I could use the proper function. Here I'll type in equals, proper, open parentheses, and here I could place this text in, close the parentheses, hit enter, and here it applies proper casing to every single word. The next function is the trim function, and here once again we see the Kevin Cookie Company. And here I have some leading spaces in front, and I don't want those. Now, of course, I could simply delete those, but once again, if you have a lot of rows of data, that might take a lot of time. Here I can type in equals trim, select this text, close the parentheses, and here it's automatically removed those leading spaces. Next, we have a set of functions that allow you to concatenate or join or combine text together. So here I have Kevin Cookie Company, and each one of these references is in a different cell, but I want to bring them all together. I could enter in equals concat, and you'll see that there are 2 versions. There's concat and then also concatenate. Concat is replacing concatenate, so I'd recommend using this one. This is simply here for backwards compatibility. Concat has a few advantages over concatenate, and that's the preferred one to use. Here I could simply copy all this text, close my parentheses, and hit enter. And here you see that it brings together all of that text. Now, of course, I don't have spaces between these different words. So up here, once again, let me go back to the function. I'll delete the text or the range that I entered there. And here I could click on the first one, place in a comma. Then I could insert a quote, a space, a quote, another comma, and then I could click on the next text. And I could also go through and do the rest of it, but I'll just leave it at this. When I hit enter now, you'll see that it includes the space. So here I concat this word with a space with the next word. Now, instead of typing in concat, you can also use an ampersand. So here, for example, I'll enter equals Kevin, insert an ampersand, and then cookie, and then an ampersand and company, and there you see it combines all of them. Now, of course, once again, I have that same issue with the space missing. So here I could insert a quote, a space, a quote, another ampersand, and then hit enter, and here you see it's added a space, and I could do the same between cookie and company. But by far the easiest way to join together text is to use the text join function. Here I have Kevin Cookie Company. I'll enter equals text join, open parentheses, and here I get to specify what the delimiter is, or what's going to separate each one of these cells full of text. I'll enter a quote, a space, a quote, a comma, and then I could say, what should I do if I encounter an empty cell? Here, I'm just going to ignore them, put in a comma, and now I can select all the text that I want to join. I'll highlight these three, and then hit enter, and here I get Kevin Cookie Company back with a space in between each word. So out of these three options of concatenating or bringing together text, text join is by far the most powerful one. Moving on, we have some additional functions here, right, left, and mid. And these allow us to take out text from the right-hand side, the left-hand side, or the middle. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say that I want to pick out the zip code from this address. I can use the right function. I'll enter in right, and then I'll select this address as my text, a comma, and then I need to define how many characters do I want to take out from the right. And here we can see the zip code is 5 characters. I'll type in 5, and then hit enter, and this pulls out the zip code. Next, we have another function called len, and this is an abbreviation for length. So I could use len to figure out how many characters make up the Kevin Cookie Company. I could type in equals len, open parentheses, and then I could put this text in, close parentheses, and there we see that it's 20 characters long. Next, there's another function called find, and then there's one called search, and they essentially do the same thing, but there's one key difference. Find is case sensitive, and then search is not case sensitive. Here in this example, let's say I want to find out what is the position of the @ character within this email address, and I could use either find or search to find this since @ isn't case sensitive. Here I could insert the equal sign, and let's use find. I'll type in the function name, and I want to find the @ symbol here. I'll insert it in quotes since I'm searching for text, put in a comma, and I want to find it in this email address. I also have an optional parameter at the end, but I'll leave that just blank. Here I'll press enter, and I can see that the @ symbol is in the 6th position of this text. Now you might be wondering, what good is it knowing what position the @ symbol is in? Well, you could really get some nice power when you combine this with other functions. So let's say that I just want to pick out the name portion of this email address, and I don't care about the @ or the domain at the end. Here I could start combining some of these text functions. For example, I could use left together with find. Let's enter in the left function. Now remember, with left, it'll keep the leftmost characters, and I have to define how many characters on the left I want to keep. Here I'll select this text. Then I'll enter a comma, and now I have to define how many characters I want to keep. Now I just want to keep 5, basically right up to the @ symbol. And I could use the find function to tell me where that @ symbol is. So the same function that we entered right up here that gave us 6 back. Here I'll type in find, and once again I want to find the @ symbol. Here I'll enter the @ symbol, and I want to find that within this text. Now I'll close the parentheses and close the parentheses again. And when I run this now, I see that it has Kevin and @. And that's because here it kept the leftmost 6 characters. So one thing I could do, if I go back into the formula or the function, I could subtract 1 from the results of the find function. And then I could hit enter, and it just keeps Kevin because I don't want to include the @ symbol. The nice thing now is this is completely dynamic. So if I change the name to, say, Sue, here it automatically updates to Sue. So this shows you the power of when you start combining these different text functions together. Moving on to the logical functions sheet, here we're going to see how you can add some logic to your spreadsheet. And first off, we could simply check, is something true or false? So here I'll enter in the equal sign again, and is the Kevin Cookie Company equal to Miss Fields? Now, I hope all of you know the answer to this, but of course not. The Kevin Cookie Company is way better than Miss Fields. Now, this simply compares those two text values to see if they're equal, and of course they're not, so it says false. But you can also use this for numbers. So is 10 equal to 5? And no, that's false. Here I could also say, is 10 greater than 5? and that's true. Here I could also say, is 10 greater than or equal to 5? And that's also true. And here is 10, let's say, less than 5. And that's false. So just a quick look at how you could compare different values within your spreadsheet. Here too, you could also check if multiple criteria is true or false. I'll enter in an equal sign and then type in and. Open parentheses, and here I could say, let's say, is 10 greater than 5? And then I could insert a comma and let's say, is 10 greater than 11? And then I could close my parentheses. And that's false. 10 is not greater than 11, but it is greater than 5. But both conditions have to be true for this to come back as true. So let's say I entered a 9 in here, and that is now true. Now, instead of using and, I can also use or. I'll modify the function to or. And here it says, is 10 greater than 5, or is 10 greater than 9? So here if I put the 11 in, it's still true because 10 is still greater than 5, even though it's not greater than 11. Moving down now, we're going to write an if statement. This is kind of feeling like programming a little bit. We get some if statements on our spreadsheet. And here's the business question that I want to answer. Do we sell more chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin cookies? Here we can just look at these numbers and we sell 97 chocolate chip and we sell 77 oatmeal raisin. So of course we sell more chocolate chip. But can we use an if function to answer that question? To make this easy, let's click on the function helper up here and let's type in if. And here I see the if function. Let's select this one. Now here I can run what's called a logical test. So let's say, is 97 greater than 77? That's my test. And here it comes back true. And then I can define, well, what happens if it's true? So here I'll say we sold more chocolate chip. But if that's false, and this is not greater, then I could say, let's say oatmeal raisin. And then I could hit enter. So do we sell more chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin? Well, we sell more chocolate chip. But let's say that oatmeal raisin, let's say we had a big day of sales and I sold 150. Well, now it automatically updates and we've actually sold more oatmeal raisin now. Moving down, we can also use and together with our if statement. So here, for example, does chocolate chip sell more than all other cookies? So let's once again insert an if statement. Here I'll click on the function helper and I'll select if again. So here I can enter my logical test. I'll type in and. Remember, this is just like we did up above. And I want to run two separate tests. First off is 97 greater than 150. And for my second test, I want to check is 97 greater than 50. Then I'll close my parentheses. And if true, let's say yes. And if false, I'll enter no. And then I can click on OK. And here we see that, does chocolate chip sell more than all other cookies? No, we don't. Oatmeal raisin sells more. But let's say I typed in 96 here. Now it's yes. Now, just like we looked at previously, here I can take this function and let's use it for this or statement. So does chocolate chip sell more than oatmeal raisin or sugar cookie? I'll paste in this function and instead of using and, I'll type in or, then hit enter. So does chocolate chip sell more than oatmeal raisin or sugar? Now let's say oatmeal raisin sold, let's say 150. Well, it still sold more than sugar cookie, so it's still yes. But let's say sugar cookie also sold 150. Now it shows no. So that's how you can use and or within an if statement. Now, you might be wondering, can you include an if statement within an if statement? And you absolutely can. And here in this example, let's say I want to know the price of a chocolate chip cookie. So here we see all the cookie types and the associated price. And I can use a nested if to figure out what the price is for this cookie type. Let's work through it. Here, I'll enter the if function. And first, I want to check, is this cookie type this one right here? And if it is, well, I want to get this price back. But if it's not, well, we want to then check the next row. So here I'll type in if again. And here I want to check, is this name equal to this cookie type? And if it is, we get this price back. And if it's not, then we want to run one more if statement. So is this cookie type equal to this cookie type? And if it is, this is our price. And if it's not, then we'll say unknown. And then I can close the quotes, close the parentheses again, and close the parentheses again. One thing that's really helpful when you're closing the parentheses, you'll see color on the parentheses. So the first one's black, the next one's red, the next one's purple. And here you can tell that I've inserted all the right number of parentheses. Now I could hit enter and I can see that the price of chocolate chip is 10. But here I could type in sugar cookie, and there I see the price is 5. So that's how you can use nested ifs to do that. Here I'll enter in formula text just so we can see what all of the formula looks like. So you'll notice it's a fairly long formula and it starts to get pretty complex. Now there's something new called if-s that makes this a lot easier. Here I'll type in if-s. And here first I could do the first logical test. So is this cookie type equal to this one? And then if true, I want this price. The next logical test is this cookie equal to this one? And if true, I want this price. And lastly, is this cookie type equal to this one? And if so, I want this price. Now I can close my parentheses and hit enter, and here I get 5 back. I'm going to move it over 1. And once again, let's show the text for this function. And you see it's a little bit shorter and easier to read than what you see up above. And in fact, with if-s, there's really no longer a need to use nested if functions anymore. Instead, you could simply use if-s. And I think you'll find that it's a lot easier. Moving on to the next worksheet, we're going to look at lookup functions, and this allows you to look things up. So here, for example, I have a table with cookie types, the associated price, and the associated cost. And let's say I have the question, well, what is the price of an oatmeal raisin cookie? So to look that up, I would say, well, oatmeal raisin, well, here's oatmeal raisin, and oh, here's the price. So I just looked that up. But we could have Excel do that for us using the function VLOOKUP. Here, once again, let's click into the function helper, and I'll type in VLOOKUP, and here it is. Let's click into that one. Here, first it asks me, what is the lookup value? So what do I want to look up? Well, I want to find the price for oatmeal raisin. I'll select that. Then it asks me, well, what is the table where you want to find this? Well, this is my table, so let me select the table. And then it says, well, what is the column index number? What is a column index number? Well, that's what column do I want to get back when it finds a match. So here it looks in this table, it'll look at the first column, and when it finds a match here, I want to get the price back, and the price is the second column of this table. So I'll enter a 2 here. Now for range lookup, I could have an exact match or a partial match. Now I want just an exact match, so I'll type in false, but once again, this is optional, so you don't have to fill this in. It's true if it's omitted. I'll click on OK, and here I see the price of oatmeal raisin is 8. Now here I could type in sugar cookie, and here you'll see that the price is 5. So here it automatically does the lookup for me. Now right down below, there's another function called XLOOKUP. And this replaces VLOOKUP. It's a newer function that's available in the newer versions of Excel, and it has some key advantages over VLOOKUP. But first, let's do the same example and see if we get the same result. Once again, let's open up the function helper, and here I'll type in XLOOKUP. Let's see if it shows up, and there it is. Here it asks me, what is the lookup value? And that's what I want to search for, and I want to search for sugar cookie. And then it says, well, what is the lookup array? And so this is a little different from VLOOKUP. I want to look in column A for sugar cookie. Here I'll select column A, but I could also select these values, but I want to select the column. And then it wants to know, well, what do you want to return? And I want to return the price. Here I have some optional parameters like, well, what if it's not found? Do I want to give an error message back? I have match mode. Here, if I scroll down, you'll see a few other options. So we have a few more options compared to VLOOKUP. I'll click on OK. And here we see I get the exact same thing back. And it works the same way. Here I could type in chocolate chip. And you notice that I get the price of 10 back. So why would I ever use XLOOKUP compared to VLOOKUP? Well, let's look at some of the advantages. What if I wanted to get the price back and I wanted to get the cost back? Once again, let's click into the function helper. And for the return array, right now I have it set to just give me the price back. But here I could highlight these 2 columns. And here I get 2 values back. I get both the price and the cost. So I can get an array of values back. Also, let's say that the cookie type column was the third column and price and cost came first. VLOOKUP wouldn't work anymore. When you use VLOOKUP, the column or the value that you're looking for has to be the leftmost column, and then the values that you return have to be to the right of it. But with XLOOKUP, you can return any column, even if it's over to the left. Next, I want to show you some date and time functions, and these are really simple. They're actually functions that you don't even pass any arguments or parameters into. So let's say you want to get today's date back. You simply type in equals today, open and close parentheses, and the reason why is you're not passing any values in. When you hit enter, you get today's date back. And down below, you can also type in now. It works the same way as today, except instead of just getting today's date back, you also get the current time back. Here we are on the very last worksheet. You've made it just about to the end, and so I wanted to give some bonus tips of how you can work with formulas and functions. On this sheet, I have a number of different numbers, and some of them have formulas and some of them are just a number on its own. Here you'll see it's a mix of both. So how do you quickly identify all the formulas and all the numbers? Well, you can press the shortcut key Control together with the tilde character, and that'll automatically show all of the different formulas and functions on your sheet. Here you'll see that I have a few different formulas, and here I reference a few different cells. And I can press Control tilde again, and I could toggle back and forth between those views. So that's a nice way to just view all of your formulas. Now, let's say you just want to see all of your formulas, and maybe you want to highlight them. Let's click on the Home tab up on top. And over here, let's click on Editing, and then here we could click on Find and Select. Here you'll see the option for Find Formulas. I could click that, and that'll highlight all of the formulas on my sheet. And now here I could apply some color if I just want all of my formulas to stand out. And once again, if I press Control tilde, once again, you can confirm that these are all of the formulas on the sheet. Now, one more thing I want to show you. When I click into this cell, you'll notice that it references two other cells. And when I click into this cell, this also references other cells. So let's say that you're troubleshooting a function and you want to find all the precedents or you want to find all of the dependents. You could very easily do that. Here with this cell selected, I could click on Formulas up above. And here I could trace all of the precedents. So this cell relies on these two other cells. But here, if I go back to Formula, here I could trace the precedence again, and it looks like this cell relies on these two other cells to get this value. So this could help you as you're auditing all of your different formulas. Here, if I click down into this cell, once again, I could click on Formulas, and here I could trace all of the dependents, and this is the dependent. If I want to undo all of this, here I can click on Remove Arrows. But a nice little bonus trick to help you audit all of your formulas. All right, well, hopefully now you are a pro at formulas and functions in Excel. To watch more videos like this one, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.